you're asking me out.
Yeah, I mean, I could have done it better, but these people keep staring at me.
He's been on some of the most high-profile shows, now going back decades.
Looking back 30 years, do you ever think it would get to this?
My initial plan when I started was, to be the next Eddie Murphy.
Lofty goals, but years of success as an actor and comedian, and now controversial social media influencer.
I've always had a mouth. I've always had opinions. I've always had a lot of energy.
No, I don't feel guilty about that.
And he's not holding back at all. Michael Rapaport on The Pulse.
This might be the end of the show as we know it.
Another exciting Monday where we're sitting back talking to people who are doing all kinds of things. They're changing the world, they're changing the industry, and they're talking to us. One of those people joins us today, 60 plus films and TV shows and a podcast and comedian. Michael Rapaport joins us. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Man, as you prepare, you're a podcast host, so you know this. As you prepare to talk to people, Googling them and looking at their background and everything else, man, you Google you, and it's everywhere. Like, you're always into something. Has that always been you, or just as the career continued to grow?
The combination of social media and my career and the things that I've done and things that I talk about have made me Googleable. Recently, it's not a plan. It's not anything that I contrive. I just try to be myself. I try to be honest. And, there's been so much going on in the world. And, I have a lot to say about a lot of different things. And I just try to be as genuine as I possibly can without taking myself too seriously.
When you look at all of that, are you enjoying it? Is it a lot? Is it additional responsibility? Like, how do you take that whole social media podcast thing?
I don't think it's any responsibility. I think it's just the most important thing is to just be, truthful to myself, to be honest, to try to be informed. And, as far as the podcast, like podcasts now are like buttholes. Everybody has one. Fortunately, I was able to get in on it right before the sort of big bang of podcasts and developed a good following and, have grown with the medium. And as far as social media, I got a lot of, I'm interested in a lot of things. I love my sports. I love my pop culture stuff. And I love my social issues. And it's kind of like a video diary. 60 plus films, 100 TV shows, all of these different things. How did you get here? Like, was this always the plan? Like, you started as stand-up comedian, right? I started as a stand-up. I fell in love with acting once I started to do it. I was very young. I was 20, 21 years old. And then, was acting and continue to act. I'll always act. That'll always be my first love. I started doing stand-up again about 4 years ago. I love doing that too. I love the immediacy of it. I love the just the unpredictability of it. I love the fact that, it's very spontaneous, and as far as this, the sort of Michael Rapaport being myself and, the sort of persona, that's social media. I've always been this way. I've always had things to say. I just never really kind of said them publicly because there was really no reason for me to or no outlet to. I go back with you to like Higher Learning, and those types of movies. When did you realize you had it? Because then for people who are familiar with like the Higher Learning movie that I'm talking about, that's not a stand-up comedian role. Like, that was you showing you have the acting chops, and you were young. I've always felt confident in my ability as an actor to be very genuine. I don't think I'm the most technical actor, but I've always wanted to be able to articulate and express honesty and my feelings, whether the characters are likable or not likable. I always want them to be human, and I always want them to be tangible and to feel them. And I think I've done a good job of doing that. And, I've been fortunate to do all sorts of films in all sorts of genres, and it's been 30 years of doing that. And, I want to continue to push myself as an actor. What's the thing you most enjoy doing? Working in Higher Learning was great. The movie True Romance, Beautiful Girls, Copland, I did 4 episodes of the TV show Friends, which never seems to go away. My podcast, the live shows, all of it. I haven't really had much to complain about. I really don't take the opportunities for granted. I really don't. And I feel very fortunate that I get to do what I do.
But this couldn't have been the plan. Like when you decide to try, the stand up and get into it early, like looking back 30 years, do you ever think it would get to this?
The business has changed. My initial plan when I started was, to be the next Eddie Murphy. Like I loved Eddie Murphy and I wanted to sort of be a stand-up comedian that started acting based on his comedy, and that really wasn't my thing, and that's not the way things unfolded for me, and that's not, like how it worked out. When I first looked at scenes to just audition for, like it made sense to me, like the beats of it, the timing of it, the expression of it, the being able to express myself in an honest way, that made sense to me, and I just like gravitated towards it. And, I've always had confidence in being able to do that and to do that well.
Up next, why he reluctantly got into the heated political debate.
I had to say something because I felt like, a lot of wool was being pulled over the eyes of people, and I didn't like the rhetoric, and I didn't like the name calling and the bullying.
Who announced that they're getting arrested on March 21st, 2023? The man doesn't lie. In the greatest city on earth, the city where you're from.
You don't have a problem taking the big swing and addressing the big issue.
I've always had a mouth. I've always had opinions. I've always had a lot of energy. I've always asked questions. I've always been sort of, disruptive. I've always naturally went against the grain with certain things. And I'm also, like to, I don't think, like when I take the big swings, like you reference, a lot of times in the things that I say and the things that I do on social media, a lot of times the humor that I'm trying to get across gets missed because people get frustrated with the topic. But I always try to give a little wink, no matter what it is, unless it's something very, very, very serious. And I don't think that's, appropriate. But even in relatively serious things, I like to, there's always a wink in there if you pay attention.
You're the guy now who in some ways is, I don't know if I go all the way to influencing politics, but involved in politics and having these strong statements. Do you embrace that?
I just feel like, you get to a certain age and, the last administration, the Trump administration, for me, that's what, I had to say something because I felt like, a lot of wool was being pulled over the eyes of people, and I didn't like the rhetoric, and I didn't like the name calling and the bullying. And I think the bullying and all that stuff is I don't think it's appropriate for a president to do that. Leave that to the comedians. Leave that to everybody else but the president.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too far into the issues, but that is kind of embracing that whole big swing thing. Because when you start using that voice to do that and you're multi-million followers, like it puts you into a different realm, both with people who love you and people who passionately come at you. Were you prepared for all that?
I mean, I don't know if I was necessarily prepared. Online, people will say some really crazy things, and the anti-Jewish and the racist stuff. Like the fact that people are so comfortable talking about that in a public forum, that's the thing that trips me out the most.
You're on tour now. You will be in Philadelphia. I mean, you're on tour a lot, but you'll be in Philadelphia April 27th, 28th, 29th at Helium Comedy Club. What does a Michael Rapaport show look like when people come check you out?
Michael Rapaport show looks, there's a lot of energy. I like to make fun of myself. I like to make fun of there's some pop culture. There's definitely, it's very personal. I talk about being married, I talk about being divorced, talk about being a father. talk about being remarried, talk about, alimony, talk about, some politics, some sports, and I definitely interact with the crowd. So the crowd is definitely something that I lean on to give them the best time possible. And I think people, expect, some trash talk, and I give it to them, but it's friendly fire. I never want to make anybody feel bad or embarrass anybody. I like to, bust chops, but it's friendly fire.
We had Donnell Rawlings on, we had Jeff Ross on, and a couple of people were talking about that kind of role of the comedians going out there on stage, but the world we live in now requires you to talk about specific issues while having fun with it. Do you kind of embrace that voice?
Everybody has their sort of code or way they go about them. I don't take it lightly that people, come to see me perform live. There's so many options of things to do, whether it's watching you, whether it's Netflix and chill, whether it's watching the game, whether it's scrolling on your phone. So when people pay hard-earned money to come see me, like, I want to make sure they walk away knowing that I gave it 500%, no matter what's going on in the weather, my world, whatever. Like, I take that I take it very seriously, and I'm always thrilled and honored and humbled by people coming to see me. So when they leave, I want to give them the best I could possibly give them.
Coming up on The Pulse, listen, if it's important, he's going to say it, whether you like it or not.
When push comes to shove, if something to me is important and needs to be said, I will definitely say it. And at that point, I don't give a F.
It might be the end of the world as we know it when it comes to Vanderpump Rules.
I root for all my housewives. Okay, I believe anybody, especially a housewife, is innocent till proven guilty. The way to really amp this show up and take it to the next level is to mix and match reality TV show genres. Love is Blind, mash up with My 600-Pound Life.
When I walk around the newsroom and producers and whatnot, I tell people we've got the guests coming on the show. And I do that a lot because I try to see what people's response is for people coming in. And there were 1,000 for you. So when I mentioned you, things like, what's with the reality TV obsession? Like, he loves talking about reality TV.
Love it. I don't know why they haven't made the Real Housewives of Philadelphia yet. Love it all.
I don't know. That'd be must-see
love all the
TV.
Real Housewives. Love the Love is Blind, the Love Island, the F-Boy Island, the Bachelor, the Bachelorette, the Bachelor in Paradise. I just think it's great TV. It's funny. It's at times fascinating. I'll go as far as sometimes it's heartwarming.
Another question when I was walking around the newsroom pointed out the fact that in the last several months, there's been beef with a former president. There's been beef with a current first lady as it relates to her comment on the whole LSU situation. Kanye, Kyrie, have you ever gotten to a point, and we can talk about all of those, where you went, okay, that was a little too much of a swing. Now I'm arguing with the first lady or the president?
There's been a couple of things that I think have gotten a little too much, but not with any of the political stuff. Things just take a life of their own. And you really can't predict when they are and when they do, but it's part of the game. As far as, someone that likes to talk trash, I know that you have to be able to take it as good as you give it. And that's part of the game.
Your social media is somebody who got in your face at a protest recently in New York, almost turned into a let's go around the corner and settle this kind of thing. And it's always on camera.
Don't make the mistake. Don't make the mistake.
Or else what?
You want to walk around the corner with me? Do you want to walk around the corner with me?
Listen, I am not a troublemaker in terms of I don't think I'm a tough guy. I don't want to be. I'm 53 years old. I'm not physically confrontational. I was just going there because I wanted to see it. I had been so emotionally involved in all the things that have been going on politically the last few years, that this was going on in New York, and I just wanted to go down there, and that was bugged out, to be honest with you. But it was really nothing, but it was just kind of like, I feel like I'm in one of these videos. I felt like I was in one of those videos, And as far as the cameras everywhere, I mean, that's just part of the time now. And I'm mindful of it, whether it be on the street, drinking coffee, or, on the subway. After all the years that I've been working and been in the public eye, I'd have bigger fish to fry if nobody wanted to film me. So, 99.9% of the time, I'm cool with it.
You were the love interest on a TV show of somebody who now has the Duchess title, standing there next to Meghan Markle.
Very stimulating presentation you gave.
Really? It was okay?
You're not only pretty, you got smarts.
Yeah, that was crazy. I did TV show, The War at Home, and she was on a couple episodes. And, at the time, she was just an actress. And, she was nice and, sweet and pleasant and very pretty and, very professional. And then you see this whole thing. It's crazy, like somebody, that reaches that kind of worldwide notoriety and fame, especially in that way. It's a trip to see that.
Somebody said, if I don't give an F was a person, it would be Michael Rapaport in terms of standing out there and confronting stuff.
I think that's the case. I do give an F about a lot of things. I do give an F about, my family. I do give an F about, my persona, my image, and, how I'm perceived. But when push comes to shove, if something to me is important and needs to be said, I will definitely say it. And at that point, I don't give a F. And sometimes, the way those things pan out are the way they pan out. I'm well aware of it at this point, getting, more familiar and understanding that social media is something you should try to control. But I think the things that I've done on social media that people have responded to are the ones that I don't think much about it. It's just sort of an expression of a feeling or a frustration.
I guess one of the things that was interesting, and I've asked a couple of people who have transitioned into talk shows and comedy and what have you, it's different when you're talking about issues that are people or people you interact with. And when you post something now, oftentimes the people themselves will respond, or other high-profile individuals jump in, on the discussion. Is that ever hard? When you were filling in on the Wendy show before, like, you had to talk about people who in some circumstances were your friends.
That's a little bit of a trip, but I think for the most part, I don't try to be mean-spirited. I think there's a difference between breaking balls, busting chops, and being mean-spirited. And, especially with the pop culture stuff and the reality TV stuff, I'm just a fan. And, I think the tone is obvious when it's breaking balls and when it's, something a little bit more serious. It's funny when you know the people, or you've known the people, or you've met the people, but you got to call, I got to call it as I see it.
Up next, clearly Michael Rapaport is passionate, but what really gets him inspired for change?
The gun violence in this country is so frustrating, so upsetting, and it's such a conundrum.
So the whole theme of The Pulse is use your voice for good. So when you hear the concept, use your voice for good, what does that mean to you? It can be charities you're involved in, things that you want to advocate for, or just information you want people to have.
I would really wish somehow, some way, and I would give up my whole disruptive platform if there was a way to get rid of the shootings and the guns, albeit I don't care what color you are, I don't care what kind of gun you use, I don't care what your sexuality it is, I don't care what city you're in, I don't care what the reason is. The gun violence in this country is so frustrating, so upsetting, and it's such a conundrum, and I don't have an answer on how it can be fixed. But the shootings in my city, New York, and Philadelphia, Chicago, the mass shootings in that have happened in Memphis, that have happened in everywhere. It's like every day. whether it's school shootings or random kid or two misled, misguided, unfortunate, gangbangers who are ruining their lives and ruining so many, other people's lives by killing each other over nothing. I don't care what the reason is, who's shooting, what kind of guns, AR-15s, I don't care what it is. I wish it would stop.
Guys, thank you so much for watching The Pulse today. And as you just heard in his closing comments, that is everything that Michael Rapaport is about. He is funny, he's an actor, he's a stand-up comedian, but at the end of the day, he cares about real issues, and he uses his voice to advocate on behalf of them. Whether or not you agree with them, he certainly uses his voice for good in whatever way that means something to him. A reminder, if you want to hear the entire interview, you can check it out all places where podcasts are available. Just hit subscribe so you'll get a notification every Monday when a new episode comes out. And some of the other episodes that you may not have seen are always available on YouTube, so check them out. And a reminder, make sure you tune in next week. On The Pulse, comedian, actress Sarah Silverman joins us.
When you change your perspective even just 1 degree, the whole world looks different, so your comedy should reflect that, I think.
And I leave you today, as I always do, reminding you whenever you can, please use your voice for good and have a good one.